Hey guys, we're back. And a while ago I did a video on Dungeon Drop, which is a great game, kind of an abstract dungeon game where you drop a bunch of cubes on the table and you form rooms using various cubes and collect the treasure and things inside of it. Well, now we're here to talk about Dungeon Drop, Drop Too Deep, which is a new expansion for the game, which is out on Kickstarter right now. It's going to be available in, I think, July of next year, 2021. And we got this prototype was given to me to do a review of, so we're going to get right in and take a look. So the first thing we have is a few new classes, and again, these aren't all, I think there's plenty more that's already been unlocked on the Kickstarter, and again, these have placeholders art because they're a prototype and not completed, but a bunch of new classes are going to add more variety. And some of them, like this, use abilities that are pertain to stuff in this expansion. So it adds more variety to your game because you have more to choose from, as well as making use of some of the new mechanics. Next up we have some new classes, and there's a bunch of these as well. Again, not completed artwork on here. But the same thing with these, there's some brand new, cool new stuff, as well as some that make use of existing rules and things from the original game. Lots to choose from though. Good variety always helps. Next we got some more quests, and again, more variety is always a good thing. Some of them, like this here, make use of the new abilities to level up your character, which is one of the new things in the expansion, as well as a bunch of other options. Again, more of these may be unlocked during the campaign. Any of this stuff is subject to change. Then we get into some of the stuff that's really new and important in this are the boss monster cards. And these are really cool in that in the original game, your boss was only the Draglin, and he dropped in the initial dungeon and he was kind of in your way and you had to work around him unless you got one of the mystic shields. In this game, at the beginning of each phase turn, whoever's the last person in initiative order is going to draw one of these cards and then get the matching cube for the boss and drop them into the dungeon. And then now, on top of doing normal damage if they're captured, they also have these abilities here which trigger when they first get dropped into the dungeon, and then have another way to trigger throughout the course of the game, which we'll get into in a bit. And then they have new scoring value over here. And there's a bunch of variety of different ones of these, and each one of them has unique abilities, different stats, and different scoring bonuses. So they really add to the game in the fact that there's a wide variety of them now. And they're not just like the Draglin before, kind of sat in the middle of the board and didn't do much. Some of these other guys do less damage, in which case you could probably just take them, just eat 3 damage just to collect him and get the reward. So you have to kind of consider those now. And the fact that one of these drops each turn, you can have up to 3 of them in play at one time during the game. We also have these cool new forbidden pillars. And again, these aren't the final color or design, but they will be replacing the large pillars from the original game. And these get dropped into the dungeon the same way those would. And if you ever make a room that includes at least one of these in it, it will trigger the abilities of every boss monster currently in the dungeon. So if there's 3 of these active in the dungeon and you make a room using one of these walls, it will actually trigger all 3 of those boss monsters. So it's something to keep track of and a new thing to pay attention to while forming your rooms. We also get these new armor cubes, which are going to be added to the initial drop of the dungeon, and these can be discarded from your stash. They get dropped back into the dungeon, and in return you can ignore up to 3 damage from a single monster. So you can ignore a small monster completely, a medium monster completely, or up to 3 damage from one of the huge monsters. Next we have these heart tokens, and I'm not sure what these are going to be in the final game. I think there was one of the stretch goals to get them in wood, but they are going to be used on your character cards to keep track of the damage you take instead of putting the monsters on there. And it's just an easier way to do that, and they're kind of a neat addition to the game. I like where they're going with that, so you don't have to worry about, like, some of the larger monsters took 2 damage and you'd have to put them diagonally across there, or some of the bigger bosses now take multiples, so now you have those hearts to put on there to represent that. And the final thing I have to show here are these new group goals, and these are for the new game mode of co-op play. And in that mode, you don't have personal quests like you do in the base game. Instead, you're going to have these group goals, and there's going to be a number of them based on the number of players you have. You're also going to drop the little meeple tokens into the dungeon, and those count as well. You make a room containing them, you rescue them, and then you have various objectives on here, in which case you need to make a room containing 3 blue gems or collect up 5 blue gems in total. Some of them only have one option to do. And there's a few other rules in this game mode as well, where you can, instead of being normal action, you can basically discard an active one of these to redraw a new one, in case it's something that you don't think you could complete. Or you could exchange one of your treasures in your stash with another player. The co-op version is kind of interesting because you can kind of win or lose together, because eventually the bosses trigger and things like that, and it starts dealing damage, and eventually the party will get wiped out. They also added rules for a new mechanic that uses the relic tokens from the original game. Originally these were used for the solo play. In this, you're going to drop these into the dungeon with the rest of the stuff, and they become relics. Looting a room with one of these relics allows you to pick it up into your stash. You can then re-drop it from your stash back into the dungeon to level up your character, in which case you're going to grab another class out of the deck of unused classes. So you can have multiple classes, and when you do that, you also get to use that ability immediately when you draw it if you want to. Otherwise, it gets added to your normal class race ability, and now you have an extra one. So I think it's a cool new way to use old and existing things from the game in a new way. So as I mentioned before, Dungeon Drop 2 Deep is available on Kickstarter right now. They're also having a number of add-ons you can add to the campaign. Some things from the old original game campaign. You have the shiny purple cubes and gelatinous cube mini expansions, which were available in the old campaign. They also came with the deluxe version of the game, so if you have that, you might already have those, but they add new things to expand your game. There's also the skeleton skulls, which is an expansion pack. It comes with 9 skeletons you can add into your dungeon, and they count as a new type of monster, and every time somebody captures one of them, 2 more of them get added to the dungeon, and they're not worth any points, and they deal damage, so they can be a bad thing. As well as in the original campaign, we had this metal Draglin cube. He was like a limited edition thing. I think he came with a quest card, but you can get him again if you don't already have one. He's available during the campaign. There's also going to be a metal cube available for the Flame Demon. And I believe he's going to come with a new class card. So you can add those on. There's also extra things. There's a new trial and tools set that's available that adds some new stuff, as well as the playmats, which have kind of a dungeon floor on them, and dungeon walls that go around to keep the dice from bouncing off the table. All nice stuff and worth looking at. If you're a fan of the original Dungeon Drop, I think you're going to love the new Drop 2 Deep. It takes everything that was in the original game, expands it, and makes it better. You have more classes to choose from, more races to pick from, so you're going to have more of a variety mix and match there. There's more quests to choose from. A new game type, which brings it up to 3 or 4 game types now that you can choose between, all with completely different playstyles, the way that the new boss monsters work in the game. I think they do a lot more than just getting in the way like the Draglin used to. If you couldn't get that Mystic Shield on your first or second turn, he was basically just there and annoying. Whereas now there's other ways to deal with him. The armor to reduce damage that he does, so maybe you could survive it, or the pillars to trigger off that ability multiple times. Various different things in there, and they're much more interactive now. Plus the variety of them, that you're always going to get up to 3 of them in a game, and with so many to choose from, you never know which ones are going to appear. And on top of everything else, there's a couple of things from the people who created the game. The first off was that earlier this year they won a bunch of awards for the original Dungeon Drop, and because of that they wanted to thank the original backers and supporters of the game. So somewhere in all of this there's going to be a pack of 1 extra race, 1 extra quest, and 1 extra class added just as a thank you for people. The other thing that's really cool that I like is that after the original printing of the game, some cards were reworded, some rules were edited a bit to make them more clear, and things like that. And in future printings of the game, all those will be included on the cards. But for anybody who backed the original game, you have the original cards. And kind of as a thank you for your support and backing, they are going to include a upgrade pack for the what do they call, second edition printing to anyone who backs this, who was in the first one. And it's going to include reworded cards, a couple of changes here and there, and 2 new rule books. So you're going to get the original rule book for the game with the new rule changes added in, as well as a second rule book for the solo player mode, which was developed after the original game was already produced and posted online, but it was too late to make a actual book to include with the game, so they're going to be sending those books out too, which is awesome. Just supporting people who already own the game, and I think it's just a really cool thing on their part to keep everybody having the same upgraded stuff. And then on top of that, as I showed, the metal Draglin was a limited edition thing from the original game, and not everybody got their hands on them, so they're going to re-release these along with the quest card that came with it. Is going to be available during this campaign, as well as a brand new one with the Flame Demon. He's going to have his own metal cube and a new class card, I believe, and that's also available during this campaign. So lots of cool stuff here. As I said, if you're a fan of the original Dungeon Drop, you're going to like this game just because of the additional variety and things it adds to it. It's just going to further enhance a game that you already like. Anyway, stay tuned to the channel. In the coming months, I will have the retail version. I will do a full video on. That should be coming out probably July of 2021, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, if you're interested in Dungeon Drop, Drop Too Deep, check it out on Kickstarter right now. I'll put a link in the description. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.